Hi there, this is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, and welcome to another random review. Today's random review is The Swimmer from 1968. This is the indicator release, spy number 46, and those of us who are complete in indicator have been waiting for spy number 46 to come along. I think this was the Altman California split, perhaps. So we've finally got spy number 46 to fit neatly into the collection. That's the alternate artwork. You get a poster and you get a lovely big thick book. This is limited to 5,000 copies. This is a film that written by Eleanor Perry, Frank Perry's wife, directed by Frank Perry, even though he left the production at one point. Burt Lancaster remembers it as being an absolute disaster. It was a box office disaster when it came out, and watching it again, you can kind of see why, because not everything is explained, which is kind of what I like about it. It's based on a short story, and by short story I believe it was really short. One of the extras in this indicator release is actually John Cheever reading his short story, just audio on a blank screen, and that takes 26 minutes, so you can tell exactly how short the film the short story actually was, because you can read it out loud in 26 minutes. It's a basic story. How can you make a film about a man who wants to swim home across rich people's gardens and swimming pools, making it into an imaginary river named after his wife until he gets home? Well, they did, and they kind of achieved a very strange, odd film that is uncomfortable, that is still uncomfortable all these years later. Stars the wonderful Burt Lancaster, who at the time of making this was 55, probably his best days were behind him, even though he would still make lovely little films like Field of Dreams and Alzana's Raid and Local Hero, but perhaps his star was fading a little bit as far as box office. Again, this was a complete disaster, and the film literally starts with him in his swimming trunks just appearing out of the woods and into the first couple's back garden. They act though they haven't seen him for a while, and essentially it's just a film of little vignettes as he passes through people's back gardens, wants to swim in their pool or across their pool, as he decides almost maniacally, by using swimming pools, he'll swim home to see his wife and his two daughters who are playing tennis at home. But you can tell the way Frank Perry uses the camera, it's almost like a stalking animal as it follows Lancaster at times. There's Sergio Leone close-ups of Lancaster's eyes, that the camera just dollies in and dollies in and dollies in until a close-up of his eyeball. So you can tell even from the first scene and the first couple that he meets, they haven't seen him for a while. that there's something not quite right with this character. And we slowly get some information before the end of the film, but we still don't get all the information. And his character does bring up more questions than we get answers for, which is one of the great things about the film. Lancaster goes from being the super confident with that wonderful smile that we all know and love, to being disorientated, to seemingly not having parts of his memory, to being unsure of his surroundings, even though he's lived in this community for years, kind of fazed by what people are doing and what people are saying. So his performance is wonderful, but again, there's something uncomfortable about it. There's something uncomfortable about the film. The fact it's now in Blu-ray in high definition, I do believe there's a US Blu-ray release as well. You can actually see the scars on Lancaster's neck, the scars on his body. So obviously the actor, had a very physical career. He had a physical career before he became an actor. And this is now an older man living with those scars, and also his character is living with the scars of what's been going on. But again, we don't get the full picture. So what this is a kind of also examination of a character who seems to be lost. The community goes from, oh, we've missed you, we haven't seen you for a while, but as his journey continues, there's more of an antagonistic relationship towards him. He has debts which he doesn't seem to be aware of. There's a wonderful, one of the vignettes is the pool that he's wanting to cross is actually empty, and he meets this little boy who's selling lemonade at the front gate. So they both, and the little boy isn't good at sports, he's not great at swimming, so Lancaster says we'll pretend there's water there and we'll swim across it, because Lancaster says if you put your mind to anything, you can pretend that anything is real. So this is obviously a character struggling with the reality, but is he knowingly making his own reality up to blank out the horrors that have been going on in his life? Or does he unconsciously not know what's actually happened? Has his mind put up a block of what's actually happened to him in the last, again, we don't know the time period. It seems to be at times years. You know, he meets a young girl in one of the pools who used to babysit for him, for his younger daughters, but he's saying they're now grown up. But then he asks the babysitter, do you want to come over and babysit for the girls? So again, you don't actually know. You know, the fact that the beginning of the film he is in his swimming trunks and he is far from home. So how did he get to that starting point in his swimming trunks? Has he been in a facility and he somehow escaped dressed in his swimming trunks? Why would you be that far away from your home in swimming trunks? Again, that's not explained, and it's good that it's not explained, because I'm not sure there is actually an explanation for it. He is a man who's fragmented. His memory is fragmented. From what we glean, he's had obviously personal problems with his wife, his daughters perhaps. He has an idealised view of them, as most parents do about their children. so I've read. And the community, his place in the community, he has also a different view than what the reality is. As his journey goes on for longer, people are downright nasty to him. He does seem to owe money that, again, he doesn't seem to be aware of. But again, is that him deliberately blanking that out? Or is it he's had such a mental collapse that his own mind has blanked that out? These are questions that never get answered. The community that he does go through, again, starts off quite pleasant, but there's a common theme where, with a couple of exceptions, these people who are kind of middle-aged, like the swimmer, none of them actually use the pool to swim in, because they all say, oh, I've had too much to drink, or I'm getting too old, or I'm getting a bit too fat. So none of them, with a couple of exceptions, but they're generally young people who are actually in the pool. These people don't actually use the pool. It's more a status symbol. Now, obviously, back in those days, a swimming pool was a sign of affluence. To have a swimming pool in your own back garden, because there is a point where he has to go through a public pool, which is quite an ordeal. So having your own personal pool in your back garden was a status symbol in those days. Obviously nowadays everybody's got a swimming pool in their back garden, apparently, but none of them actually use it to swim in. It is literally, look at me, I've got money, I don't need to actually use the thing as a function. I can just have it there and people know that I'm wealthy. And there's a scene with an old couple of nudists. So Burt Lancaster does get his bottom out. So this is an actor who isn't afraid to obviously show off. He spends the whole film in his trunks. Well, apart from the time he doesn't. And you can see scars. And again, it's an actor who is older. And obviously his character is older. Again, he's a ladies' man. But even that, his view of that is completely different to this community and this group of people. The view of that. Because we, in general, we all like Burt Lancaster, there is something about the film that is uncomfortable, because we don't want to see him in that kind of state of distress and not really understanding what's going on, even though we do glean little things along the way that perhaps he's not this perfect ideal human being that at times he tells other people that he is. But because it's Lancaster, we want to be in his side. Even when he was J.J. Hunsaker, he was still like cool, and kind of there's something attractive about the J.J. Hunsaker character, even though he's an absolutely horrible human being. And that's something about Lancaster. So Lancaster still has at times that wonderful smile, that glint in his eye, that we'd use in Local Hero and Field of Dreams, that grin from being like the Crimson Pirate. But at times he also has that kind of J.J. Hunsaker stare. And then he has moments where he's completely broken, and you can see it in his face. I mean, he should have got an Oscar for this, really. Not that matters, but the scenes where he is broken, and you can kind of see it in his face, he doesn't understand what's going on or how. So there is an element of, again, of how did he get there? How did he get there at the start? And obviously when he does finally get home, some answers are given, but there's still questions. Again, that's what makes, I think, The Swimmer still interesting, because it doesn't tell you everything. You can have your own theories. Because again, there are times where people act like they haven't seen him for years, even though he just lives on top of the hill symbolically. So exactly how much time has passed. Again, the thing with his daughters about, he thinks at one point they're still babysitting age, and then another time he talks about, oh yeah, they'll be getting married soon. So again, there's a disconnect within his own version of what's going on, let alone the version that we see in the version which is different again of the one that he projects to the people that he talks to. He's very guarded in regards to some questions that he's asked, and then other questions he's very open. So it's a very complex character, and again the script is really good considering it's based on a 12-page short story, as far as getting into this psyche which is completely broken, but it's about the facades that we produce ourselves to give to other people, but also the facades that we put up to ourselves to kind of hide nasty truths that we don't even want ourselves to know, even though we do know those truths. So it's a really interesting film. It's still a little bit uncomfortable and anxiety inducing when you're actually watching it. Again, because it's Lancaster, because it's somebody that no matter who he plays, you still want the best for. You could see Kirk Douglas playing this as well, but I don't think he would be as good. Obviously Kirk Douglas would have to be beaten up at one point, or crucified, because he did like that kind of thing. I mean, Lancaster, the last kind of third of the film, he does get a limp, because there's a scene where he and the girl who used to babysit for him go around like a horse pen and do jumps in slow motion, which is very 60s. It's just a very interesting, and it's still a little bit creepy and a little bit odd. Again, the extras, there's a commentary with with the Frank Perry biographer, Justin Bazung from 2022, Mars Champion on The Swimmer from 2013, which is an interview conducted by Alison Anders at the Turner Classic Movies Film Festival. Against the Tide, Richard Oade discusses the unique genius of the Perry's film from 2022, which is 11 minutes. Again, John Cheever, who wrote the short story, reads the short story. That was 26 minutes. And there's some title sequence outtakes. There's Ileana Douglas, a trailer commentary from 2019, which is 6 minutes. There's some TV spots, and of course, there's the nice booklet. So that's spine number 46, finally, from Indicator, and it's The Swimmer with the wonderful Burt Lancaster. Still odd, still strange, but still wonderfully compelling. And where did he actually come from at the beginning of the film? Answers in a postcard, and hopefully you'll join me again for more random reviews. This is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, saying farewell.